Say about our committee when we got a senator, but we don't have a quorum. Thank you, Senator Albers, for being here. We're going to wait for one more. We need a quorum of 8, and then we can get started, okay?
Mr. Chairman, this is a conspiracy to get my steps in. It's working.
Okay, yeah. I've had Senate House bills that way for me. Text Debbie and Wilkerson and Stacy and... Okay, we're going to get started. Chairman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to recognize two individuals that have come a long way for this hearing. And
well, can you hold off on that one moment? Chairman Tarvin, can you give us an invocation real quick, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we look to you for guidance in all that we do for this state, and help us, give us wisdom that we will make the decisions that will be best for our citizens. And as always, we give you the praise for all. For it's in Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Okay, Chairman Green.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two commissioners, tax commissioners here, one from Quitman County and the other one from Baker County, and I'd like for the members to acknowledge them. If they are, please stand.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right, thank you, Representative Chairman Green. Okay, we're going to take up one bill. It's a fairly simple bill. Is Homer here, by the way? There he is. I wasn't paying attention. Okay. Senator Albers, talk to us about Senate Bill 128. It looks like a pretty simple bill.
It is, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you, Mr. Chairman, and this august committee. The Police Officer Annuity Benefit Fund, which benefits all as well as through fines and fees. There are no state tax dollars that go to this fund, and it helps to both recruit and retain some of our finest throughout this state. Have to give a lot of credit to both Mr. Bryson as well as all those in the team, those who serve the forum, for doing such a good job managing the fund. And like most funds, they are looking to increase the amount spent in alternative investments to 15%. Some of you remember the great work which was actually begun by the Firefighters Pension Fund. As you'll see behind me, Mr. Morgan will tell you all about the great things we've gotten out of that, and we've then followed that with most of the other retirement systems. If you're like me, you want to diversify your portfolio. Having all your eggs in one basket isn't so good, and I don't know about you all, but the last year my 401k hasn't done so good if I just follow the typical stocks and bonds. In summary, Mr. Chairman, the alternative investments have provided a significantly higher return on investment over the years, and this is a good balanced portfolio for the fund. So I'd ask your favorable consideration.
Thank you very much, Senator. Appreciate that. Any questions from the committee? No questions from the committee? All right. Mr. Bryson, you mind coming on up? If you could just, I think this committee has a pretty good understanding of alternative investments. I think, if anything, we would understand the risk profile versus performance of the investments. Go ahead.
Just real brief, the legislature a number of years ago defined alternatives investments, and they made those options for public pension funds. And as the chairman mentioned, the Firefighters Fund has sort of taken the lead in the state and increasing the amounts that they have invested in that. We've looked at that. As the senator said, if you look at traditional stocks and bonds, you haven't done well the last few years. We've had some small investments in alternatives. They were our best performers over the last year, and in the long term, since we've invested in those, they've returned almost 10% for us. So we feel like it's a good option for our members and for our funds. And I am a member of the fund that receives retirement from this fund. So if I didn't think it was the right thing to do, I wouldn't be here today.
Thank you for that, Mr. Bryson. Any questions from the committee? Representative Jenkins.
Yes, so the 15%, I mean, what is that based on? Is that percentage based on anything other than just higher than what it was, or is there a number that you're shooting for there?
We don't really have a number in mind for that, but as the fund was initially started, they've sort of moved at 5% increments. I think the legislature and most of the funds, truthfully, they want to take a conservative approach to this and sort of ease into it without making a huge investment at one time. I think one of the advantages with the alternatives is if you want to earmark and allocate funds every year into the fund, so you incrementally change or increase your investments in it. And so that's the reason for that.
Okay.
And if I could just follow up, and it's up to 15%, giving the fund managers that option based on where they see the market going. But, you know, if you look at the assets under management, what they'll have in place, you know, they can just use that threshold and going to where they think makes sense. And for like most of us, that might be, you know, we invest in our home, right? Or we might invest in a local business more than we would our kind of traditional 401k.
I got you. Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. David, does that answer your question? All right. If I may, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think in regard to the alternative investments, this provides effectively a third option, if you will, because if you're Homer, if I'm looking at if the portfolio for the peace officers, I say 45% is in equities, and it's probably going to be in larger cap stocks, which have maybe a little bit less of return. The other 45% is going to be fixed income, which is really not doing well in inflationary times because bonds paying 5% are not near worth as much as they used to. This is another option where, just to put a flavor on it for the committee, it's my understanding that alternative investments, at least for ERS, was paying, I know Jim's here, maybe 17, 18% annualized return over a 9-10 year period is what we were looking at. I know we did something similar for Morgan and the firefighters, and he's noting, I think, a very similar return. So if you're looking at something over the long period, making in the high teens versus in the high single digits, it makes it very attractive for closing that gap.
Very true.
So any other questions from the committee? Number 28. Chairman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the proper time, I'd like to be recognized for a motion.
So recognized.
I'd like to move that Senate Bill 128 do pass.
I got a motion and a do pass. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Who's going to carry this bill for you?
Bill Hitchens.
Did I?
That would be Colonel Bill Hitchens, also known as Representative
Well,
Jeremy.
God bless you for that.
Please don't reconsider.
I won't. All right.
seeing
Thank
as-
you very much.
I think Representative Hitchens, because he collects about 9 pensions, is most qualified to carry this
He
bill.
probably is. He probably is. I don't suppose you want to stay here and present Chuck's bill, do you? Because he's still in Senate right now.
Is this the one for tax commissioner's retirement?
It is,
I
yes.
would be happy to sit here for a moment if you'd like me to.
I am short of a sponsor if you don't, so yes.
I prefer vertically challenged, though. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, not short.
So, Chairman, we're going to get you a copy of Senate Bill 56. These nice folks came all the way up from South Georgia, and I really don't want them to send them back without having at least a hearing. So this is Senate Bill 56. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, this bill really came into effect for our tax commissioners, not just behind me, but throughout our state, who are doing not necessarily a glamorous job that people call them each and every day to thank them for, but a very important job to make sure that we can collect the taxes due and keep all of our forms of government running. When you think about our county tax commissioners out there today, like anyone else who serves in government, we want them to give the opportunity to save and put away money so one day they'll be able to retire. And today, they do not have that ability like most of us do. So if you look at the bill, specifically as you start moving into the second page, this is going to allow them to work together to have a 401k plan, similar to what we do for most everybody else in the state of Georgia. I think it's pretty straightforward, very consistent with the practices, and I think they're well deserving of having this opportunity to do that. I think that you'll probably get some testimony from them to talk about why that's important, but I think it's a very consistent measure that we've had in this General Assembly, and I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 17, is that Representative Evans?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, Senator, Mr. Chairman. Do you know how this came about, that the tax commissioners were out without this ability, and is there anybody else in state government that we need to be worried about bringing in to have this ability? Because it seems obviously wrong that they don't have this ability, so I'm just surprised.
That's a great question, Representative Evans, and always great to speak with you. I'm not really sure as the history to why. I know over the years, since you and I have been serving for some time together, I think we came in at the same time, if I remember us doing the Legislative Leadership Institute back in 2011.
That's right. Ages ago.
Yes, exactly. I think several times we have found areas where just because we have different constitutional type officers throughout the state, that some areas were just candidly missed for whatever reason. And then as we sunsetted different parts of the old ERS system and moved people to a 401k system, I think we just needed to catch up in some areas. And I think we probably will continue to hopefully not find too many more, but I know we have found several since you and I have served.
And I know we have several speakers. I know we didn't have a sign-up sheet, but I know we have several people that can speak to that very issue. Jim, did you want to? Jim Potvin, Executive Director of the Employee Retirement System. Do you want to come to the podium? Do you mind doing that? I'm sorry, Stacy, did that answer your question? Okay. Go ahead.
Still would be interested to know if there are other areas that could be identified so that we can get them all at once, but.
I understand.
I raised my hand.
Mr. Potvin.
Sorry?
Go ahead, Mr. Potvin.
Yeah, Jim Potvin, Executive Director of Employees Retirement System, and I raised my hand just because I can fill in some of the historical gaps here a little bit. Up until 2012, the tax commissioners and their staffs were members of the Employees Retirement System, and that survived the transition from what we called the new plan, the 2% pension plan, to the GSEPS program, which is the hybrid that we have in place today. Those employer contributions were not funded by the counties at that time. They were funded by the state through basically the Department of Revenue, would sort of collect all of that and remit it to us. In 2012, of course, we're coming out of the Great Recession, if you will, and the decision was made at that time to allow the tax commissioners and staffs to continue in the ERS, but only if the counties would foot the bill. So anybody hired into one of those positions after, I believe it was July 1, 2012, could only become a member of ERS if the county agreed via some kind of a resolution, essentially, to go ahead and pick up those employer contributions and remit them directly to ERS. As of this time, not a single county has made that election. So effectively, anybody who's been hired since that time has not been able to participate in the ERS, and we still do have some grandfathered people who were hired prior to that time.
Thank you for that, Mr. Potvin. To the author of the bill, thank you for being here. Chairman Albers, thank you for stepping in very quickly. I know we have a couple of questions coming up. I just want to make sure, Representative Evans, does that answer your question, Mr. Potvin? Okay. Okay, I think I saw 29 first. Chairman Tarvin.
Mr. Chairman, this may be something you answer or retirement system. A few years ago, there was a bill that we would take a percentage of delinquent taxes and start a retirement. Did that didn't work, or do you remember that?
I can't speak to that. I don't remember that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure there's people in this Capitol that do remember those discussions, but I do not.
Late taxes, it would be a. Didn't we do that, Chairman Martin?
As I recall that, and I think part of the discussion around that, if memory serves, was the kind of contradiction it would be for the commissioners whose job it is to get taxes paid on time would actually benefit from not collecting them on time because that delinquency. I mean, I'm not saying any of the commissioners would have done that, but it would have been a bit odd to get
I understand.
your compensation coming from a delinquency that somebody could point at you and say you helped create.
You don't want the
which
wrong
you-
incentive. I know.
Right. It
Any
was
of us
just
do.
that I think is what probably tied up that proposition.
I understand. Representative Jenkins.
And I'll direct this to whoever knows. How many tax commissioners do we currently have that would take advantage of this that are not covered? Because I know we do have grandfathered ones that are grandfathered in, and quite a few that have no retirement.
To the author of the bill, I guess that you would take that? Or?
We've got a list out. Find it, but I believe either Kevin Payne, head of them, or John could probably answer that question. I know it's like 30 or 40, I believe, isn't it?
Go ahead. If you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Payne. I'm the Floyd County Tax Commissioner, also proudly one of Senator Huffstetler's constituents. But I'm the legislative chairman for the Georgia Association of Tax Officials, so here on behalf of the state tax commissioners. And so I can answer a few of those questions, actually. Representative Tarvin, the bill you were talking about, I actually wrote that bill. It did make it to the House floor, and it failed. So we've had several attempts to try to get tax commissioners back in a retirement system. So that's what's led to us being here today. And to answer the question about how many do not have any retirement, that's one reason why we have Mindy Ward and Jessica Kraft here with us today, because we do have about 18 to 20 tax commissioners with absolutely no retirement whatsoever. And I don't mean they don't have just state retirement. They don't have any local retirement, not a 401k, not a 403b, nothing. We have about another 20 tax commissioners that all they have is state retirement because they happen to be in office prior to 2012. So when they retire, their successor will have no retirement whatsoever. And then there's about another 20 or 30 that I would call what I refer to as kind of subpar retirement. We have some tax commissioners that, of course, are, again, we've essentially been excluded from state retirement since 2012. And there are some tax commissioners that have good local retirements. There are a lot of them that have bad local retirements. I've talked to a few that may actually have a pension locally that they say they'll be lucky if they get $200. I've had one tell me they'll be lucky if they get $400. And so something is better than nothing, but that's not really a retirement system. And I don't know if that answered the question, and I can continue the question about how we got here today and how the tax commissioners got to this point, if you'd like, and kind of go over the why this bill's here.
I understand. Chairman Martin, I saw your light come up a couple of minutes ago.
Just real quick, and I believe we talked over the interim. If you guys,
Yes, sir. We talked after last
yeah.
session.
No, thank you very much for taking time to talk to me about this. So my question, when we say they don't have them, I mean, going back to 2012, the county could have passed by resolution and picked up the employees, and your county wouldn't do that for you?
So the county, in the law now, the county could pay for us to be in the state retirement plan, but as was mentioned, to this day, we're 11 years later, not one has done so. So essentially, we were barred from retirement when that happened July 1st, 2012.
But to be clear, the state didn't do that. Your county chose that.
Well, the state did vote to remove us from the retirement plan.
But gave your county the ability to put you in it at their expense.
That's correct.
I mean, it's
That's correct.
it's a semantic thing. So what would that cost your county to be in the system that you're in now? And again, I don't know if you were there before, if you were, as they refer to the old system or the old system or the G, I don't know when you joined, but what would it cost your county to have you be in
I may have to
ERS
defer
now?
to the expert. Senator Hufstetler probably knows how much it costs to be in the ERS system. I will tell you, about that time, the budget for tax commissioners, and it was all their staffs, was about $13 million back in 2012. I think it's somewhere in the $6 to $7 million range now because, again, we had all of our staff back then in the pension system. And so, but I'm not sure how much one employee is. I don't have that number. Do you have that number?
And again, we had, if I can follow up, Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to be arguing. I'm just trying to get my hands around the metrics of it, because there's a couple of different ways this could go. I mean, you're getting into a way to come into a defined benefit or to be part of a defined contribution system. Just for the tax commissioners, the other employees are covered at the county level?
Some are and some are not. But we have tried, of course, to get plans and failed. So we're just trying to get whatever we can get.
So I'm going back to that. So I mean, the county pays your salary, correct?
That's correct.
And so I don't know if I can direct this. If the county offers benefits to employees, aren't there some rules about offering those benefits to all those that they employ? Mr. Travis? I mean, you can't offer a 401k in the private sector to a portion of your employees and not to all of them. You have to offer the same thing to everybody. How does this take place?
So currently the state minimum salary is set for the county tax commissioners. So they're constitutional officers, one per county, they're elected, and the state minimum salary is set. There's also, fee structures and all these things. So their staff, I believe it's similar to the sheriff's office where they kind of establish how much they need to run the office and present that to the county, and then the county would fund that. I do not know about whether this would cause a federal issue by allowing them to have a 401k just for these state elected officials rather than including all of their staff. That might be a better question for director of ERS or someone with them that has more knowledge about Peach State reserves and all that.
There are definitely constitutional officers that are excluded from retirement that the county provides.
I was talking about the staff, though. I mean, the staff gets a check from Floyd County, right?
That's correct.
And how are they excluded from the plan that Floyd County offers all their other employees?
I don't believe that they're excluded. So I believe that employees at the local level are offered a retirement system as the same as any other local employee there in the county.
Okay, I just thought I heard the gentleman mention that some weren't on a retirement plan.
I could
Well,
clarify.
some counties do not have a retirement plan. We have 2 counties right here that don't have a retirement plan at all. So none of their employees have a retirement plan either.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Travis. Chairman, does that answer your question for now?
Can I help clarify it?
To the author of the bill, go ahead.
So, first of all, I was a county commissioner there, 99 to 2006, and we do have a plan for employees, but the tax commissioners were on a different plan. This, and he may not have said it, but this doesn't benefit Kevin Payne. He has a retirement plan. A lot of them have a retirement plan. Some of them don't. My feeling was they probably all should, but when we had the big budgetary stuff back then some of these plans were taken away, and I'm not disagreeing with that. My only thing was they're the only constitutional officers, to my knowledge, that bring in money for the state that have nothing in some locations. So this was to be for people who had nothing, and a 5% match on a 401k is nothing like those plans. I mean, that plan is dropping down 9 million, 8 million, 6 or 7 million as people get off of it. But this is, the total cost is in the hundreds of thousands for this plan. I think the eligibility right now would be about $225,000, but there's other people could potentially go on it, and it could go up higher than that. But they certainly wanted a much better plan. But I was trying to offer something so that we could say everybody in the state has some sort of a system, and that rather than a pension plan per se, that we would do a 5% match, so that they had something out there, and we could say everybody in the state has something, that brings in state dollars for the state constitutional officers. So that's my thinking on it. I'm not saying counties shouldn't take more responsibility, and I'm not saying that everything is right. But while his employees have a plan and he has a plan, this is really not for his county, which is my county. This is more for some of the rural counties to try to give them a very minuscule plan, but something that I think would make a difference to them to be able to accumulate some savings, if that helps.
Thank you. I know Representative Jenkins, you had a question, but Representative Wilkerson, I think you had one as well. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess a question and then a comment. To follow up on the chairman's question down at the end, Martin, for those counties that do not have any plans at all, so nobody, whether it's the tax commissioner or the staff, we will now be putting in a plan for the tax commissioners only and not the staff. And I think that's where the concern is, that you will have a discrepancy between the staff and the high, because I know a lot of times when they look at 401ks, they look at highly compensated individuals to make sure you're not giving them a benefit, you're not giving anybody else. So that's just a comment on that. The second piece relates to lines, I'm assuming with lines 35 through 41 that the state is putting in some money. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If that is the case, is this a fiscal bill? And if it is, or has it been deemed not a fiscal bill? And if so, does it need to be a study for it?
It's deemed a non-fiscal bill. Same as when we updated the employees of Georgia last year, where, we do a 5% match with them, and it can go up to, after 13 years, to a 9% match. I think it was a really good thing we did for them statewide that doesn't cost very much money. That was deemed non-fiscal because it's just a 401k. Now, I don't know the legal reasons why that is, but that's the case. But if I could also answer, you got employees that don't. We've got judges that have retirement plans that the staff doesn't. We've got different sheriffs, everybody else. This is just constitutional officers, and one in particular that brings in $1 billion, $2 billion to the state of Georgia, that have nothing, and it was just saying we don't micromanage the county level necessarily, but a constitutional officer, this is the only one left that doesn't have anything.
Okay. So if I could, just to the author and to Representative Wilkerson, so Sarah, the committee analyst, is making copies of a fiscal note. It is just to be clear, and I want Mr. Travis to clarify if I misspeak here. It is a non-fiscal retirement bill, meaning we don't need a fiscal certification from the state auditor because it's not a defined benefit bill. However, it does have a fiscal note because it has, to Chairman Martin's point, it has a cost to the state. One-time setup costs as well as ongoing costs for contributions. So it's a non-fiscal retirement bill because it's not defined benefit, but it does have a fiscal cost. In regard to the fiscal note, Sarah is making copies right now. Thank you. Did I answer both of your questions, or okay? Chuck, let me come back to you. Representative Jenkins.
Yeah, and this is something that I guess y'all can give more clarification, but my understanding is a tax commissioner is not an employee of the Board of Commission. I mean, obviously, the minimum salary set by the state, they have to give them a budget, and their employees are not employees of the whatever county Board of Commissioners. So as far as offering, them something different than everybody else, they're not their employees, I guess. Is that the correct way to say it, or is there another way to say that?
I would say that, and being a county commissioner, constitutional officers, we deal with them. We can certainly do budgetary things with them, but because they are constitutional officers, whether they're judges or tax commissioners or sheriffs, they don't report to me as a county commissioner when I was there. They're their own
So I think that's why this
entity.
disparity may exist. I mean, obviously, some counties, they set the budget for the office and they may provide these things, but I don't think there's anything in law that requires them to do it because they're not employees of the county commission. So that's how they get excluded because they're not their employees, I guess. So it's an important distinction to understand what's happening and why it's happening and how it can legally happen.
Thank you for that. Chairman Martin again.
Yeah, I think in the discussion it clarified to me. When you say they and no to the tax commissioner, I just want to make sure if your county has a retirement plan, your staff is covered under it. It's just, and you may be covered under a.
That's correct. I think
because I differ slightly from Representative Jenkins. I think that while they work under your office, I think their W-2 comes from the county they're in. Does it not?
Correct.
It does.
It's all out of your budget. So, is it? I know we can't speak for all 159 counties, but is your assumption that counties that have a retirement plan for the folks that answer the phone and the county building, if they have that, the folks that work in the tax commissioner's office, if they're full-time employees, that they can avail themselves of that same plan. It's just some counties don't have that at all.
That is correct, and
Okay.
I think
That's fair. I just wanted to make sure. I don't want to interject or take more of the committee's time. I thought I was hearing places where a county had a retirement plan and they weren't covering the staff and then the tax commissioner's office, and then we were talking about dealing with tax commissioners, but we were leaving that staff behind and then covered. And so I'm clear now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Payne, do you want to comment any further on that?
Well, I would just say that I think generally if they do offer a retirement plan for the employees, if our employees would generally be eligible for it, it is the constitutional officer that they can exclude, and sometimes they do. But again, we also have counties with no retirement at all. So that's one reason why we're here today.
If the chairman, I do have a concern, and I don't know if it's been brought up here, but if we're going to, we obviously can't do it for just a certain set of counties. I understand that. But if we open this up to all counties, is it plausible, Mr. Payne, that some counties will choose to say, no, we're not going to put our tax commissioner into such and such a plan, a county plan, private plan, what have you. We're going to say, we're going to go with the state plan because the state's going to do the match and we don't have to bear that cost. Isn't that a possibility?
It is a possibility, I guess, under their home rules. I guess they could exclude a tax commissioner. I don't know that they could, if they're grandfathered in. I'm not sure what the rules are on removing somebody that's already in a local retirement system. I haven't thought about that because honestly, we're here for people that have absolutely nothing.
Right.
Because just make sure everybody understands that there is no double dipping here. I'm excluded from this plan that's before you because I'm already in the state retirement
Because you're already
system.
covered.
That's right. So you can't double dip under this one. But I guess it's possible that a county could exclude their tax commissioner because they could be in this 401k. But again, we're not talking about the state pension plan here. It's their own money going into this with a 5% match, right?
These smaller counties, how many roughly? We're talking 30 or 40 counties in total?
There's at least 40 that either have absolutely no retirement or they currently have a tax commissioner that has been in office since prior to 2012 that only have the state retirement. So once they retire, their successor will not have any retirement.
And apologies if you've already mentioned this or if the author's already mentioned this, but to Chairman Martin's question, is it simply a matter of cost that prevents these smaller counties from engaging into their own 401k or similar plan? What is preventing them from doing so?
I would say that's 100% of it, and frankly, just unwilling to put. I mean, it's expensive, I assume, to put
Right.
to pay for 100% of the retirement pension plan that we're talking about, and so no county has been willing to spend that money.
Well, again, we're strictly talking defined contribution here, correct?
Right. Yeah, that's what we are eligible to be in the defined contribution if the county will pay for the full amount of it. But no
Okay.
county has
And-
been
and-
willing to do that. But
To the author?
If I could answer too, those counties that have a plan, it is way, way, way better than this plan. As a former county commissioner, politically, I don't think they would do that because I'm going to take him. I've got all the employees of the tax commissioner on this plan, but I'm gonna take him and put him on a way, way worse plan, because this is a very tiny plan. It's just something to say we give them something. So I don't see that happening out there
Okay.
in those counties.
Because it's not a competitive option, is what you're.
Right, they would never go for going to this plan if they've got the other.
Okay. Chairman, thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. Representative Jenkins.
So we mentioned that the tax commissioners are the only ones that don't have a plan. So just to put the issue in context, the probate judge, sheriff, clerk of court, what kind of plans do they have? Are they state plans or?
So all the other constitutional officers have a pension plan that is collected, funded by fees that are collected in their office.
And they are funded by fees collected in their office, and does that have to do with the state government, or is that just?
They were all plans approved, most of them back in the 50s and 60s, so they've been around a long time. And just if I can quickly tell you about the history of why we don't have one, tax commissioners took over the operation of the Tag and Title Office for the state of Georgia in 1955. In 1956, we were added to state retirement. So our compensation for being agents, we are legally agents of the Department of Revenue to run the Tag and Title Office. And so the compensation we received was we were added, and our employees at the time were added to the state retirement system. And so that was the case for over half a century, for 56 years, until the recession came along, and so we were kind of on the chopping block when all state budgets were being cut. And so that's what happened in 2012. So we didn't have our own plan like the sheriffs, the probate judge, the clerk of courts have, because we were always included in state retirement.
Understood. Chairman Williams.
Have y'all looked in the ACCG? I know, like our county, on our tax commissioner is 1.75 times the number of years they've served at the end of 30 years, and that's their program through ACCG. Have they looked at ACCG, or is that just something y'all totally haven't? It's just not in the cards, or?
I'm just trying to get. I mean, again, that's a way, way better plan than this one. I'm just trying to get, and you see the cost here. I mean, maximum if everybody took it, it's about $500,000. I'm just trying to get something for them,
okay.
and at minimal cost, but that we'll be able to say every constitutional officer in the state of Georgia has some plan.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, thank you, Mr. Payne. We have a few guests. Anybody wanted to come say anything before the committee? To the author, and you want to come on up? If you don't mind, introduce yourself. Mic's on.
Mindy Ward. I'm from Quitman County. I appreciate Representative Green speaking out and recognizing Jessica and I would like to say, yes, it is a budgetary constraint for counties. Quitman County is the next smallest county in Georgia. Jessica has one staff member. She was hard pressed to be here today. I have one full-time girl. I have a part-time girl for half the year. The county beside me, she has one full-time clerk. If any of you were to walk into our tag office at any given day, you might have me renew your tag, to do your title work, to take your property tax payment. We're completely different in South Georgia, and we are struggling. It's hard down there. And my county cannot afford. They would love to give a retirement system to all of our county employees. They just don't have the money. And in all honesty, I will tell you, Representative Martin asked the question of why the county would not pay my portion. But I would like to ask why my county should have to pay my portion. They don't pay the sheriff's portion. They don't pay the clerk of court's portion. They don't pay the probate judge's portion. I don't know why we're singled out. My county, their budget is 70% of their budget is provided by checks that I give them every month from my taxpayers. Those are big numbers in South Georgia, in rural counties. So it is very much a budget issue, and I'm about to complete my second term, I would like to be here 2 more terms, 3 more terms, but at the end of those, serving Georgia for 16 to 20 years, I'd like to have something to show from the state of Georgia. Because, like I said, we get in the trenches. We actually do the work. We're there, and we're responsible for it all, just like Fulton County and just like every other big county in Georgia. So I would just ask for your consideration to not forget us in the South. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Okay. Anyone else? I know we didn't have a sign up. Any else from the audience wanting to speak? This is a hearing only because we're still discussing this in regard to the Appropriations Committee. Chairman Hufstad, I think you and I spoke about that over the weekend. To the author, anything else you wanted to cover?
No, I think, and I would say this isn't a perfect situation. I'm trying to split the baby and get something, that would do it. That's really what I'm trying to do here.
I understand. Anything further from the committee? I just want to say thank you to you ladies driving. Gosh, you probably drove 6 hours round trip, or you've driven 3. You're going to drive 6 round trip, or maybe 8 round trip. So thank you for being here. Sincerely, it's important because I will just say, as the chairman, I see bills and I see the Capitol and I see committee meetings and so forth. When I see your faces here, it just tells me how this makes it real. So I appreciate you being here. So, all right. With that, this is hearing only. Chairman, we'll be in touch, and we are adjourned. Thank you.